on, I should have silenced you. We're at number 8.
Okay.
I just want to silence this. Where is it? Do not disturb. Okay, and all right. This is still going to ring.
Did he? I know what he's doing.
Okay. Okay. So, number 8. What we're talking about today is the cunning of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, we always call it the evil inclination, or we call it the stumbling block, or we call it the opposite of what we're really supposed to do. So how do we overcome this? What do we put into practice? What do we put into place in order to overcome it? What we're going to see tonight is what the Ramchal promised right at the beginning. And that is, he said, I'm going to go over and over and over the same concepts throughout each chapter. Not because you need it, because I need it. So that is what he's doing in these last 6 or 7 paragraphs. So let's start, and I think we stopped with number 8 last time. Am I correct?
I heard it somewhere.
Okay. We either did or we didn't.
I think you סימנת לעצמך, לא?
Yeah, I know, but I don't know where.
I heard it.
I don't know which. I think that's where we are.
So we're on number 9. We read
8.
number. Oh, you want to read number 8?
I want to read number 8.
Okay.
No, I want you to read
Okay.
number 8.
In truth, this is one of the cunning strategies of the evil inclination to relentlessly burden people's hearts with his service so as to leave them no room to reflect and consider which road they are taking. That's why I'm so confused.
Okay.
But actually, can I just read it? Mine is slightly different, and I think it gives
Okay.
it slightly more clearly. This is precisely the strategy that the Yetzer Hara employs against people. For it is a great warrior, experienced in cunning, and it is impossible to escape the Yetzer Hara, except through much wisdom and great foresight.
Okay. Great. That's a really.
Isn't
I
it?
think we should get them
Right.
both, and
Right.
then I'm going to take it a small step further. So we call this the strategy of the Yetzer Hara, this cunning strategy, and it's there to distract us and from our purpose in this world. What is our purpose in this world?
Get closer to Hashem.
Hmm?
To come closer to Hashem.
To come closer to Hashem
Right.
and to prepare ourselves for
The world.
the world to come. Now, what did Hashem put into this world to make us work harder? Okay, sorry, what did you say? But the Yetzer Hara, and you said challenges, and more than that, marchikim, those outside influences that distance us from Hashem and serve to make it more difficult for us to concentrate on what we're supposed to concentrate on, because there are always these distractions. So let's just look at a distraction. Hashem said, okay, I'm going to open up the knowledge over here, and I'm going to allow artificial intelligence to come into this world. And this artificial intelligence is in WhatsApp, and you can use WhatsApp for all sorts of things. You can use it to waste time in huge abundance, or you can use it to subscribe to those shiurim, to those Torah shiurim that you can also listen to ad infinitum, and you can also start building relationships and friendships through these Torah shiurim, and do what we've been absolutely obsessed with in the last week, was a woman from Denver named Chaya Parkov decided that she had watched her father suffer with kidney disease for 27 years. There was no dialysis. There was dialysis. There were no kidney transplants. And she was at a shir, and someone mentioned a Jewish organization, and one of the things that they do is they look for people who will donate a kidney. And she said, that's what I'm going to do.
Mm.
So that was 10 years ago. And her husband said, no way. You have small children, you have a family. No, that's not on the cards. And so 10 years later, she went to New York, and she had had all the swabs and tests done before, renewed it, and she was matched up with two donors, one who there was some sort of
The
The
discrepancy.
recipient, they needed one.
Recipient?
She
The
was a donor.
recipient,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
there was
yeah,
one
gotcha.
recipient that it matched, but it didn't match. There were antibodies that weren't compatible. And then there was somebody else who she was supposed to donate to, and that recipient, for some reason, also didn't come through. And then she heard of Gershon ben Galina, a man from Israel, a chayal in the army. I think he's keva. I think he's in permanent army. Kidney disease. And yesterday, she had the transplant. So we were obsessed with putting together Tehillim, who's going to say which Tehillim, how many times how do you, it's Chaya Dvara bat Bracha. We talk about her, and after, just before she went into surgery, she came onto YouTube and she said hello to everybody, and how inspired she was, and how inspiring it's been to be with everybody who's along with her on this journey. And we haven't seen pictures of her afterwards, which I don't blame her. But she has been WhatsApping. So Hashem put this wonderful intelligence into the world. It can either make us come together as one, or it can make us disparate and fighting and all sorts of junk. But what Ramchal is saying, be careful, because all of those things that Hashem puts into the world can be used for good, but they can also be used to be marchik, to push you away from your avodas Hashem, to throw diversionary tactics in our way so that we follow incorrectly. It is now up to us. Hashem says, I've put everything in front of you. You've got it all. Now you pick and choose. Now you do your bit. So the Alshich says that the Yetzer Hara, the Alshich is a, sorry, I didn't look up his biography.
I don't need his biography, but I just frame of reference.
Frame of reference, he speaks, he's a commentary on Torah. Okay? And he calls the Yetzer Hara an insensitivity. We can be sensitive to one another, or we can be totally insensitive to one another, say the wrong things because, I don't care. So I'll say what comes out of my mouth. What comes out of my mouth is what you're going to hear. So an individual can step by step become more and more insensitive to what's going on around him, to take him from what he knows is the correct mode and just slide into the incorrect mode through a behavior or a habit or a characteristic that we just don't bother to fix. First, the person tries the behavior out. You know how sometimes a child will look around, say a word that he or she has
See what the
learned.
reaction is.
Yeah, see what the reaction is, and then go on from there. But we're no better as adults. We will sometimes say something outrageous and look around, and if everybody is smiling, well, you know what? That went over well. Not do it. But it was an insensitive remark. Know how to discern when it's discomfort that the laugh is, or when it's really laughing along. A person who knows that his or her behavior is outside of the norm, and maybe just a little bit outside of the norm, but because it's been outside of the norm just that little bit, then we go one step further and one step further and one step further. It's like dipping our toes in the water. To begin with, it's really hot, so we pull out and we don't do it again. And then we say, you know what, that wasn't so bad. And so we try again and again. And then we become used to this fact that we are being insane. Oh, there she goes again. Ha ha ha. She always has these witty comments. Not. But we do it anyway. For whatever reason, the Yetzer Hara is telling us to do it. Our Yetzer Hara, we have to be careful of our Yetzer Hara, because that Yetzer Hara is what becomes the norm for us. And the Navi, Ezekiel, says that the Yetzer Hara makes us become hard like a stone. And that is the klipa, the outside, the shell that encompasses us. And as we begin to engage in an activity that's just slightly different from the way we're used to behaving or supposed to be behaving, the Yetzer Hara then puts obstacles in our way from doing teshuvah for it, from being more careful about it, not giving us the time to analyze what's happening, not giving us, it just keeps throwing things at us. We say he, but we suddenly become wrongly sensitized to all of these other kinds of behavior, and they keep coming thick and fast. So we don't think them through, and we just act impulsively. So says the Ram.
The other time you said that the Yetzer Hara is kind of
So the
has to
Yetzer
be better.
so the Yetzer Hara is out there. On the one hand, he's throwing these obstacles at us, but on the other hand, if we skirt the obstacles and we push them away and we don't make them as part of ourselves, then he's doing us a favor, because in that way, we're doing the opposite for ourselves. We're teaching ourselves to be sensitive. No, that's an insensitivity. I'm not going to go there. That's more difficult. And that's the Yetzer Hara, what the Yetzer Hara is doing is pushing us towards forging that close relationship with Hashem rather than pushing us further away. So,
So if I speak ugly, if I just make a comment that's hurtful to someone, so that's my Yetzer Hara having a party, and I'm alienating myself from Hashem, because that's not what he wants from me.
So what do you do? What do you do about it?
You stop it. You do teshuvah, and then you I'm just trying to verbalize what you're saying. and
Yes,
it's like,
yes. But go on, finish it up. Finish the thought. You
well, you apologize, right?
apologize, and then what do you do within yourself? What
Promise
does?
that you will not do it again.
And then when it gets thrown at you again, and it's not the same circumstance, but it's very similar.
Yeah.
What do you do?
You
You
remember.
remember.
If you've done
Step up.
teshuvah, you remember.
Yeah.
If you haven't done teshuvah, then you fall for it again. And you turn around and you beat yourself up and say, I did it again. But instead of beating oneself up, one says, I need to be more thoughtful.
Mhm.
I need to work out a regimen. And we're going to come to that at the end of the chapter, because the Ramchal then I have a set of questions for us to put to ourselves that the Ramchal gives us so that we move away from that. So yeah, the Yetzer Hara is having a party. We're not. Because when we look at it again and we say, whoops, not only have I estranged myself from Hashem, I've estranged myself from my friend as well. And we're going to, so he's going to deepen this
So let's
as we
just
go
say,
along.
okay, that you actually remain insensitive and you don't realize what you've done. Okay. So it would be really helpful if your friend were to say to you, that was hurtful. Or wouldn't it? I don't know. So let's just say you're sitting there and you don't realize what you've done.
And then you go home and
You think about it always.
Right.
Yeah.
You play it around in your mind and you think about it. And you say to yourself, is that a good thing? Did I put my foot into it? What am I going to do next time? How am I going to keep myself from that?
Quiet. That's the best thing.
No, siag lachachma shtika. The fence that one puts around wisdom is silence. And you know what to be silent is? To listen. It's the word, the same letters. Unscramble them. Silent becomes listen.
Listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going to, so this is what the Ramchal is doing. He's said this a couple of ways at the beginning, and now he's said it again. But now we're going to go into it in a little bit more depth. So let's go to, let me see if, no, we're not up to 9 yet. So
No.
our job then is to be mindful of what we're saying. You know how all this mindfulness has come into the world very recently? So that mindfulness is a very important tool to keep us from becoming insensitive. That when whatever we do, however we behave, we need to put a kibosh on it before we do something and think it through. So if a person allows themselves, and this is your example, the luxury of being derisive to another person, and then sees the effect on that other person, that person becomes intimidated, and the perpetrator, the one who has made the insensitive remark, is empowered. So that's a bad thing. That's the work of the Yetzer Hara. That's definitely the work of the Yetzer Hara. So our job is to be watchful, which is what you said. We have to be careful. We go home, we think about it, we say, whoops, I really put my foot into it that time. So we have to make sure that we understand the important tasks that Hashem's given us to fulfill in this world, and that is to prepare ourselves for the Olam Haba, for the Olam HaEmet, the world of truth. So instead of rushing into an action and impulsively doing whatever we're going to be doing and looking at it in retrospect and thinking, whoops, I think that was improper, if we would stop to consider, okay, I'm about to open my mouth. Is what I'm saying positive or negative? Is it sensitive or insensitive? Should I say it or should I not say it? We have two gates.
I'm
Okay?
thinking about it.
The tongue, my elder Bubby, Zichrona Livracha, always used to say that to us. You have two gates for your tongue, your lips and your teeth. Clamp your lips shut, close your mouth, and think. Use your head. That's what you have to do. And we'll see that even though we're tempted time after time, because temptations always assail us, they're always there for us. If we do things in a measured way, then we won't go wrong. And that's what the Ramchal is saying here. Be careful. So, how do we know? How do we thwart the Yetzer Hara? So the Ramchal gives us a formula. He says, when we throw Zehirut, we're in Zehirut, right? We're in caution. When we throw caution to the winds, we're fulfilling the mandate of the Yetzer Hara. And we're disloyal to the mandate with which Hashem fortified us. And that is to be careful. So when we say to ourselves, well, I'm only doing what comes naturally to me. I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary. I'm not doing anything unusual. That's no excuse. That's no excuse. In fact, that falls squarely into the hands of the Yetzer Hara, whose job it is to push us off the rails, and he wants us to fight back. He wants us to fight back. But his job is to push. The more the Yetzer Hara pushes, the more we resist, the higher the reward. So the secret to the characteristic of caution of Zehirut is that a person has to say to him or herself, is this who I am? Is this who I really want to be? Do we really want to behave naturally? Or do we want to behave in a manner that behooves Hashem and Torah and mitzvot? So those questions need to be foremost in our minds. Just off the cuff behavior, put it away. It's not a good thing. So let's go
No,
to
I'm like really self-conscious now. It's like, oh, what I'm going to say next, is it right? Is it wrong?
So when we first start with it, then you're right. It's, oh.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, these thoughts flip into our heads really quickly, and we can do that discernment very quickly once we're used to it. So number 9.
For he knows that if they were to put their ways to heart, even the slightest bit, certainly they would immediately begin to feel regret for their deeds. The remorse would go and intensify within them until they would abandon the sin completely.
Okay, Bonnie, what did yours say?
I don't know. I'm trying to find it, to be honest with you. 'Cause one
So
second.
this is actually the steps of tshuva.
It's the steps of tshuva, and it's the steps of sensitivity. It's orlat halev. It's just like while you're looking for it.
Or set your minds upon your ways. Is that where correct?
No.
For he knows that
Ki yodeh hu
You're not
she'ulai
featuring or something.
ulelei hayush
It's totally
sanim
different.
livam. And we know that if he's made himself, you want me to, let me see.
So I ended that. That was the end. So this would be 9, the beginning of it.
Yeah, so
Wrong how? Is it? So that where how it
Is that the second?
It's here. Shul-
ki yodea.
Shul-
Yeah.
Shul-
Uh-huh.
It's here. It's supposed-
Well, I read the wrong one before. One second.
While you're on
No, this
red,
is saying
then.
number 6. You said, hold on, this is where I'm a little confused.
Your numbers are different.
Your numbers aren't the same as their numbers.
Oh, there you go. But I have no idea what I'm meant to be reading. This one?
כי יודע.
It's right here. Here for the
So the Yehsar knows
Mhm.
that if people would pay just a bit more attention to their ways, they would undoubtedly begin to reconsider their improper actions immediately, and their regret for their misdeeds would grow continually stronger until ultimately they would forsake the path of sin completely.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I'm
So,
on the right track.
Sounds a little bit more like what we just said.
right. But it sounds similar because he keeps going over and over the same thing several times in different ways. So what he's saying here is that the Yetzer Hara knows that if we were to ingrain the characteristics of mindfulness into our being, then there would be no such thing as acting irrationally. It just wouldn't happen because we'll be flipping through those cards in our heads. Irrational behavior is the enemy of mindfulness. And the buzzword today is to be mindful. Eat mindfully, exercise mindfully, sleep mindfully. Our entire being is supposed to be mindful. You know what? The Ramchal said this in the 17th century, and we're just coming to it today.
we did discover that. Interesting.
We didn't discover America.
Interesting.
So truly, this does not come from modern day psychology, but it comes from the Torah. And the Torah tells us, think before you act. Weigh up the consequences of our actions vis-a-vis the cost of our behavior. Think of it as we pour our coffee on Shabbos. Did I put the water in first or did I put the coffee in first? I put the water in first because that's the way you do it on Shabbos. Do we simply take our finger and press the electricity and bzzz comes the water? Or do we switch that off Erev Shabbos and pump the water on Shabbos out of the urn? And when we have the cholent on the flame, and the stove smells like it's going to be burning, do we simply take a cup of water and pour it into the cholent? Or
Take the children to the water.
I had this discussion last night. I had to flush it down the toilet.
Is that what you said last night?
And then you take the cholent to the water and somebody pumps the water into it straight.
But it was about.
We think, how should it be done? So I'm not going to paskin here. I'm just going to say we think how it should be done. And and when we leave the room, on Shabbos, and we're used to switching the lights off immediately, do we switch the light off or do we put our hand out and say, no, I'm not even putting my hand out? It's Shabbos. I'm remembering that it's Shabbos. I'm mindful that it's Shabbos. And we don't switch the lights on.
I think it's such a great example using Shabbos because it actually shows.
Timers.
No, also from the point of view that that's so second nature now that we don't even think about it. So the whole point that you're making is eventually everything will become second nature.
Right.
That we will always be mindful of what we say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a great,
Right.
for me it is anyway.
So what about when we get on the phone with our friend? And we just gab about what somebody wore, what they didn't wear, comment on the terrible taste or the great taste, or make a remark about how she completely missed the mark fashion-wise, and maybe she should take some sort of class to learn how to dress. What are we doing? Are we sensitive to the fact that our words might be hurtful, and if she were sitting right next to us, she would be mortified? Well, she's mortified anyway, because it's Lashon Hara. or rechilos, gossiping. Are we mindful of that? And what if our best friend, our very best friend, someone says something about her and we rush to her defense
Mhm.
because she's our best friend and we love her and we would not let anybody denigrate her. Shouldn't that be like everyone else?
Mhm.
The rebuke we give is measured so that the talebearer won't be mortified, but we speak in such a way that she can hear and understand what we're saying. You know, there are two types of hearing. There's in the portion of Ha'azinu, at the end of the Torah, the poem, the just before it's Ha'azinu and then V'zot Torah. Hazinu hashamayim va'adabera v'tishma ha'aretz imrei pi. Listen, ha'azina, ozen, ear. Listen, shamayim, listen, heavens, and I will speak. The tishma, and the earth will absorb the words and the words of my mouth. There's listening where it just reverberates on the eardrum, and there is hearing where it absolutely becomes a part of us. We have to learn to speak in a way that the person can hear what we're saying. Batchen was talking about that in the 5 languages of love,
Mhm.
where she said, you have to figure out what it is that
Fills up.
speaks to that person. So I'll put it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
It speaks to that person. If we say something negative to the person that's sharp and harsh, the person will just shrivel up and
Do not listen.
it'll close and it won't be choder el halev. It won't penetrate into the heart, into the emotion. But when we find the language that we can speak so that that person is able to hear us and then use what we've said in a good way,
Then your heart. You open your heart.
then you open your heart. So it
That's that. I mean, those are the words of affirmation, really. I mean, it's like just
it can be affirmation,
Well, no,
or it can be
her reference.
her
to-
reference was
right,
affirmation,
right.
or maybe the words of affirmation don't speak, but the doing speaks.
No, yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
but doing is also a language. It's also a speaking. It's
I
not
was
a
just
speaking with the
referencing
mouth,
the fact that you would be hearing.
right?
That was.
And hearing is understanding.
Oh.
נעשה ונשמע.
Right. Okay.
Hearing is understanding.
But
And
האזינו is more listening attentively. It's not
okay,
just listening.
Right.
the tishma ha'aretz imrei pi is an absorption. So even though I might be listening intently, it might not be getting into me. I have to pour, it has to pour down to penetrate. Tizal katal imrati, but my words might just be absorbed.
Mhm.
It prepares the ground for absorbing all the moisture.
You're talking. All right. One second.
I'm talking in
Metaphorically.
parables.
Yeah.
I'm
I
talking
realize that, but I
metaphorically.
mean, so it could be just just using the Robertsons, as a reference to the 5 languages.
Mhm.
I mean, it's whatever speaks to you will open your heart, which is you just said,
Right,
and then you'll absorb it.
right.
It'll become part of you.
And that's what musar is. That's what rebuke is. Rebuke is not just that I go and I say, you know what you said was really mean and horrible. Who's going to listen to that?
Mhm.
When you say, you had such a beautiful relationship, and I remember when you used to speak so lovingly, that opens the heart.
Hmm.
So, but you have to find the language that talks to that person. And if you're not the one, then don't say anything and find the person who can and who will have the influence. But what we're saying over here is that this kind of behavior thwarts the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara can't fight against this because we've pushed the Yetzer Hara away from us. Not forever, but in this instance. Oh,
I think like the Rambam said, like if you sin or something like that, so you distance yourself from God. When
Yes.
you do the tshuva,
You come closer. Right. So the trick is to find how you're going to be able to sort through that. Heard a beautiful Torah Anytime this morning by Rabbi Shushan, not the Rabbi Shushan from Phoenix, his brother. He said that his father is a very big Talmid Chacham, and one day he came in and he was visiting with he went to visit his grandmother, and his father was there. It was Erev Shabbos, and there was his father sitting in front of his mother, putting her makeup on for her.
Beautiful.
And so Rabbi Shushan said to his father, "What are you doing?" And the father said, "Your grandmother," his mother couldn't see anymore. He said, "Your grandmother was always a dignified lady. And I know that she would be mortified if she went out on Erev Shabbos without makeup and without looking 100%. So I'm making her look 100%. He said, "Can you imagine a Talmid Chacham, a scholar, sitting in front of his mother, acting like an esthetician?"
It's wonderful.
So it evokes laughter, but it's so true. That is thwarting the Yetzer Hara. That is putting a fence around it. It's impenetrable. Actions like that, the Yetzer Hara cannot get through. The selfless actions, the sensitive actions, the actions that we do to bring people closer to us rather than estrange them from us. So the Yetzer Hara's job is to get us to think only of ourselves and not of others, not of the effect that we have on others. Therefore, the Yetzer Hara knows that even if we're given even a small chance to think things through, then we might do the right thing. Why would the Yetzer Hara think this? Why would the Yetzer Hara think this?
If we were given a small chance, we might do the right thing. The Yetzer Hara thought that.
Yeah, if we just have the chance and we do one little thing, he's lost us forever. Why would he think that? Can you think of a pitgam, a saying that would fit here? Pitchu li petach, kechudo shel nachat. Open a small opening as large as the eye of a needle. Va'ani eftach lachem ke'ulam. I will open it up as widely as a general hall. All we have to do is take one step in the positive direction. One step. The minute we take that one step, Hashem says, "I'm there with you."
You just need to do like the first step and then
You just need to do the first
like in
step.
Kriyat Yam Suf, the first things, and it's like
Nachshon ben
Ah,
Aminadav, who
right,
ran
yeah.
into the Yam Suf,
Yeah.
and he said, "Okay, Hashem, I did what you want. Now what?" And the waters opened. They didn't open. They actually went into a
It's
wall.
12, yeah.
And it's even more beautiful and complicated than that, but we'll not
Sure
go
it
into
is.
that at night.
I was just like, I only just learnt about the fact there was 12 just of late, the last couple of years, the new one.
So there's a great story that I saw, and that is that there was, you know what a schlemiel is, and you know what a schlemazel is.
Mhm.
The schlemiel is the one who always spills the soup, and the schlemazel is the one he always spills it on. Now, can you imagine Shlomi, the policeman in Eretz Yisrael, who's such a schlemiel and a schlemazel, that he could not get out of being a patrolman, a foot patrolman. And his friends in the police department were devastated. So they thought, you know what? We're going to do something really nice for Shlomi. We're going to make sure that he at least gets one upgrade before he has to retire. The lengths they went to, they hired some thugs to pretend to break into a bank so that they could bring Shlomi there so that he could find them and haul them into the police department and he'll get a commendation. So comes the night and they say to Shlomi, oh, it's your night off. Let's go for a walk. So they go for a walk. They said, why don't we go through this street? He said, nah, that's a dangerous neighborhood. I don't think we should go there. So he said, oh, come on. What happens if someone's going to break into the bank? Nah, nobody would break into that bank. It's too poor a neighborhood. Then all of a sudden, Shlomi saw a glint. Now, these thugs were already inside the building and ready to pretend to be breaking into the bank. And they're waiting for the sign. And the policeman friends, this wasn't part of the drill. So they said, no, we don't see any light. He said, no, I see a light. I said, Shlomi, you're imagining it. He said, no, I see a light. So, what could they do? They were going to ruin their plan. They didn't want to ruin their plan. They wanted him to get this commendation. So they said, okay, we'll come with you and then we'll have to go into the bank. He said, okay, fine. So they go into this back alley and sure enough, there is a glint. Some people were there with flashlights. And Shlomi and his friends, Shlomi was a langaloksh, as they say. He was a skinny guy. And he squeezed into this really small space. And there were 3 Arabs there who were setting bombs underneath this building that housed the bank and would have collapsed a lot of buildings around it as well. And they thwarted them from placing the bomb. They brought the guys into the perpetrators into the police station, and Shlomi got his commendation.
But they were God ones, not they were their ones.
Pitchuli petach, give me the ability to jump in for you. Hashem says to us, I'm with you. Just show me you want to do it. Just take that first step. If you take that first step, I'm there with you. So do it. And that's what Ramchal is telling us. Not in quite as interesting a story, but it's what he's telling us. But what he says is very interesting in the next piece, and that is, one more thing. We also said that what we have to do in addition to taking that step is to look back and see, what have I done wrong before that I need to atone for? What have I done wrong before for which I have to say vidoy, that I have to admit that I did it wrong? And when I admit that, and when I truly move in the opposite direction, then Hashem will help. But if I do not do that step of vidoy, of admitting that I was wrong, then everything else falls apart. And it means that I'm not really serious about wanting to do what Hashem wants me to do. And Hashem is going to help me in the wrong way rather than in the right way. We choose b'derech she'adam rotze lalechet bo molichin oto. The way a person wants to go is the way that Hashem helps him. You lead, and Hashem will make it happen for you. We can do it for the good or for the bad. And the classic example of a person who desperately did not want to do something that his mouth said he wanted to do was Paro. Right? Paro said, I'll let you go. Just get the plague away from me. And then after the fifth Makkah, Hashem hichbid et lev Paro. Hashem hardened Paro's heart. What does it mean he hardened his heart? Hashem did not allow him to do what he really did not want to do. He really did not want to let Bnei Israel go. He was on the verge of allowing it, and Hashem said, you don't want this. And because you don't, until you want it and really want it, I'm going to let you go in the old way. I will help you in that way. And that's the only time we see. So let's see what the Ramchal says over here.
This is similar to the wicked Pharaoh's advice saying, intensify the men's labor. His intentions was to leave them no time whatsoever to oppose him or plot against him. He strove to confound their hearts in all reflection by means of the constant, insistent labor.
Okay.
Incessant
labor. Okay, so what was it that Paro did? Paro said that he wanted Hashem to stop the plagues, right? But then, no sooner did the plagues stop than he went back to the behavior that he had exhibited previously. Not only that, but he gave them even more work to do and made it even more difficult until the next plague came. And this meant that his only intention in saying that he wanted and was ready to acquiesce to Moshe's request was because of the plagues. So Hashem said, no, you can't do that. Now, the work for Bnei Israel was terrible. They were building Pitom and Ramses, the two cities. Pitom and Ramses were built on quagmire. They whatever they built the day before sank into the ground and was no longer there, and they had to start from scratch every single day. And so the pressure on Bnei Israel was so great that they didn't have time to think about Hashem. They had time to think about nothing except that the labor that they were doing. And the truth is, we might give a fleeting thought at some stage when we gain a lesson in mindfulness, but the effect might not be strong enough to really affect us to stop our doing what we were doing that we knew was incorrect. It would stop us from turning over a new leaf. It just wouldn't make enough of an impression on us. So even if we took one giant step forward, if we didn't really mean it, we weren't going to get anywhere. It was like the quagmire that Bnei Israel was building in during their time in Egypt. So what the Ramchal is telling us over here is that the small bit of concentration that one might have to do the right thing might not be enough, because Hashem knows what we're thinking and he knows what we really want. And so he's going to give us what we really want, not what we say that we want. So if we don't do teshuvah for what we know is wrong, then Hashem's not going to help us in doing the right thing. Okay, Hashem, I'm going to say that I want to daven every day, but I'm going to find an excuse every day not to daven. So Hashem's going to let us have excuses. Hashem is going to give us not what we say we want, but what he knows that we want. So how many times have we thought about a declaration of, this will not happen again. Never will I do this again. So this is the effect that the Yetzer Hara wants. Ramchal suggests that at every opportunity that we have, we should stop and we should weigh our options. Is this what I really want? Is this the way I really want it? Am I just paying lip service to what I know Hashem wants, but I'm really not prepared to go there? What small step can I take? What baby step can I take? What step that's as big as the eye of a needle can I take to move myself forward towards a goal of becoming better in keeping my mouth shut, in not switching on the lights on Shabbos, in davening, in saying Tehillim, whatever it is? What is that one small, tiny baby step that I can take? So we have to plan our steps. And in this, it's by doing that, it will lead us into the right direction. If not, it's going to take us back on the old track. So the Ramchal says the problem is that we try to make a grab for everything that we can so that we're going to have Olam Haba. Okay, all well and good. So we're having Olam Haba, but I want everything from Olam Hazeh too. So I want to have everything in the stock market. I want to have all the whatever, the beautiful kitchens, the beautiful dining room, the marble slabs on the floor. I want it all. But I want to also have my Olam Haba. Well, if you're not going to work for it, you're not going to get it. If you're not going to do what you say you really want to do, it's not going to happen. It will be like Paro. So I think that's where we have to. Hello.
Join the clause.
Is this me?
All right.
Oh, I'm not interrupting. Oh, are you live?
I am live. I am going to unlive.
This is unusual.
This is her birthday.
Oh my gosh. Happy
Okay, I'm
birthday.
trying
It's
to-
about. Thank you.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
We're
No,
finished.
we're finished for tonight.
Oh,